What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and I am back with the round 2 battle of the bracket round of the Brawl for All Round 5 tournament. If you haven't seen the past 2 episodes, make sure to go check those out. I'm going to try to have all of these in a playlist, so you should be able to find the playlist on our channel. I'll also link the most recent episode in the description below. So, as a little bit of a refresher, we did advance out of the pool play with an undefeated record, and also won our round 1 bracket game against the Johnson in what was a pretty close 2-0 victory. And now we have a game against Seton, who is, so he's our opponent here in this round. And his draft is pretty threatening. He is rocking the Tornadus T, the Ferrothorn, Dragalge, Blaziken, Barbaracle, Gardevoir, or Mega Gardevoir rather, Crocodile, and the Suicune. So he has a lot of threats on his team for sure. His Z captains are the Torn T and the Blaziken. Torn T especially is a mon that's really good against my draft, mainly because of its speed tier and the fact that it's not affected by Sticky Web, obviously. So that speed tier really makes it pretty annoying for me. I have good switch-ins to really any one coverage move he could try to go for, but the combination of those coverage moves is definitely a bit difficult for me to deal with, or for my draft to deal with. So that's definitely like the top threat on his team that I have to keep an eye on with my build. I do have some ways to work around it. I'll talk about that here as I show the team here briefly. I'd also say that the Blaziken is annoying for my team in the sense that I don't switch into it well really at all. Its dual stabs are virtually unresisted on my team. Araquanid can kind of switch into the dual stabs if it wants to, but it's kind of a soft check at best. It doesn't have recovery, obviously, so it's not the best response to it. And he can easily run something like Thunder Punch or Stone Edge and just blow me back as well. So yeah, Blaziken's pretty difficult for me to switch into. That's something I need to deal with more offensively for sure. And I'd argue that the Suicune's actually a pretty annoying threat for my team, despite the fact that I have like Ferrothorn, which is kind of like one of the Smogon standard checks to Suicune. It's still really annoying against me and something that I'm going to have to play pretty carefully around. But let's talk a little bit about the team I'm going to bring for this matchup, as I think the best way for me to break through this draft is to take advantage of it aggressively and offensively, as I don't feel like he has like the best defensive switch-ins to a lot of my threats, and those mons that do switch in well defensively against my team are pressured by a lot of my offensive members. For example, that Suicune, that is a mon that can switch into a lot of my team, as it normally can do against any team, but it's also like his only switch into a couple of my mons, most notably the Infernape and the Zygarde, and that's something I can really take advantage of here with this team build. So the primary win con of this game is going to be this Infernape. You can see now with the Flame Charge and then Dual Stab plus Mach Punch. Mach Punch with Iron Fist is pretty essential for the potential Barbaracle bring. Fortunately, it's not a Z Barbaracle, which does make it potentially a little bit easier to deal with, but I also have to keep in mind the variety of items it could run. In that case, it could run a Chople Berry, so I probably will want to try to weaken it down a little bit before trying to send in Infernape to check it if possible, but more likely it'll be like a White Herb variant. So once I see that, I'll know how to deal with it more effectively. The Mach Punch is really good for that. Combination of the Close Combat and the Flare Blitz hits his entire team at least neutrally, with the only exception being the Dragalge. And if he brings Dragalge, I don't see it being able to stay healthy for very long in this game, especially because it'll probably be used as his Toxic Spiker, which will give me a free turn to do something to it offensively. So, yeah, so that's the Infernape this week. I think it's able to set up on a variety of threats. If I just chip down a few things, I can knock it out with a Flame Charge. And at +1, he really can't deal with Infernape. His team lacks priority outside of his outside of the Blaziken's Vacuum Wave, I believe, and I don't really expect Vacuum Wave in this matchup. So if this gets that Flame Charge off, it can very easily sweep through his team. The only thing I really need to have weakened, 2 things, one being the Dragalge, the other being the Suicune, and in order to help with that, I'm bringing once again, Dragadan Zygarde. Dragadan Zygarde just hits this draft so well, and I think it partners well with the Infernape in this matchup for sure, being able to help wear down that Suicune to the point where my Infernape might be able to sweep in the late game. Not a whole lot else to say about this. It's a pretty standard set. Ground Beam is super good against this team because his only resist to ground is the Torn T, and that obviously does not appreciate the 1,000 arrows, the base form of that attack of the Groundium. So yeah, this is just really good against him. That offensive combination is something that I think can drive me home in this round. And then I have the Ferrothorn, which is my spike stacker in this game. Little thing to note on this, I am running Bulldoze just so the Blaziken's not a 100% free switch in. I don't mind if Blaziken comes in once because I can switch into Blaziken once, but I don't want it to be able to have like repeated free switch-ins to the Ferrothorn. So by having Bulldoze, that ensures that's only able to come in once, and then it has to always fear the potential Bulldoze every turn from there on throughout the game. Spikes, for obvious reasons, really helps chip down mons for the Infernape and Zygarde, and Power Whip and Leech Seed are just good moves on a Ferrothorn. Then I have the Mega Diancie, which is my Stealth Rocker in this game. A little extra bulk on it this week to help take those hits from the Blaziken. Like I said, I do have that one switch into Blaziken. Diancie is that switch in before I Mega Evolve. So if he has the Blaziken, you might see me holding onto the Diancie in regular form until I have to switch it into it. And at that point, I'll get up my Stealth Rock. But combination dual stat plus HP Fire hits his entire team super freaking hard as well. So another good offensive threat against this team. Then I mentioned before that the Torn T is probably the biggest threat to my team. So I'm actually going to use my Crobat as my response to Torn T in this game with a lot of bulk investment and some Spadef investment. And this moveset allows me to deal very well with Torn T. Obviously, if it like hits me with like a Flyinium Z and maybe I think a Flyinium Z is able to knock me out after rocks, if I recall correctly with this set, so I do need to keep that in mind. I might have to only check Torn T with this, but I know I am able to take the Z Hurricane, which could definitely come in handy for sure. And it's also just a good pivot around the Torn T, like between Ferrothorn, Mega Diancie, and Crobat, and even Zygarde. Like between those four mons, I can pivot around the Torn T pretty well. It just does require some prediction in this game, definitely. But then Taunt plus Toxic allows me to help deal with a sub-variant of Suicune, particularly with Infiltrator. I can go for a Toxic as Suicune is behind a sub, and that'll ensure I don't lose to Venkun in this matchup, which is definitely what I would expect to see, since that would be the best way. Well, I shouldn't say it's what I expect. I think he should bring Crocune because of the potential for Infiltrator on Crobat, but I could easily see him bringing Venkun in this matchup, which, in case you don't know, is just like the sub-protect variant of Suicune or Sub-Calm Mind, and that would be a way to help him better deal with Ferrothorn. But, you know, it could go either way. Regardless, I wanted to make sure I had an option to deal with Suicune behind a substitute, and that is what Crobat is also able to do in this matchup. And then finally, I have the Choice Scarf Mesprit as an offensive check to the Torn T, as nothing else on my team, I guess besides the Crobat. I wanted to have two offensive checks to Torn T because it was the biggest threat against my team, and Mesprit with the Choice Scarf is able to do that. Also has the option to donate a Choice Scarf to the Suicune if it becomes a bit of an annoyance for my team as well. So that is the team for round 2 of the bracket round. Let's hop on over to the battle. And as we can see from the team preview, my opponent Ceton decided to bring the Suicune, Torn T, Ferrothorn, Crocodile, Mega Gardevoir, and the Barbaracle. So that is an interesting team for sure. No Blaziken, which is really nice for my Diancie. It really frees up my Diancie to be able to get up those Stealth Rocks potentially a little bit earlier in the game. And not seeing the Durgalge is also really nice for my Infernape. So Infernape is looking like probably the primary win condition in this game, as I can most likely set up on the Ferrothorn or on the Mega Gardevoir, potentially even on a weakened Crocodile, depending on how the game plays out. So the Infernape is looking really nice, and the Zygarde also is of course looking nice just because it looked nice at draft heat preview for sure. So between those two mons, I think I'm in a pretty good position for my win conditions. But in terms of the lead matchup, I'm definitely going to lead off with my Crobat against the team, just because it has the best overall matchup against the Torn T, and I can potentially Toxic that immediately. And if he wants to lead with anything else, I do have countermeasures to those mons on my Crobat specifically. So with that said, we can go ahead and hop right on into this, as I lead off with the Crobat and he leads off with the Suicune. This is a great opportunity to get that Toxic off on the Suicune, just in case he is not a rest variant. He goes straight for the Calm Mind. Now here it's obviously tempting to go for the Taunt. I'm actually going to go for the Brave Bird first, again just in case he is a sub variant or a non-rest variant, because that gets me a little bit more chip damage off on him, and now I can go for the Taunt. Having the Suicune a little bit more whittled also of course helps with the Infernape and the Zygarde in the late game. Now here he goes into the Ferrothorn on my Taunt, and he makes a very nice play, doubles into the Torn T as I go into my Ferrothorn on his Ferrothorn, trying to get up a spike. And now I'm going to make a pivot from Diancie into Crobat against the Torn T, just to, you know, avoid the super effective coverage, maybe scout him out a little bit, see if he has the Hidden Power Steel. And he makes the switch into the Suicune, and I just go straight for the Brave Bird with my Crobat, and I'm able to chip down the Ferrothorn a little bit more. Now, once again, I'm going to go in my Ferrothorn on his Ferrothorn, trying to get a spike, but once again, he makes the play, and here I dodge a Heat Wave. I decided to stay in with my Ferrothorn on that turn because I wanted that spike up really badly, and I knew unless he was Inferno Overdrive, I was guaranteed able to take his Heat Wave. I guess unless he was like Life Orb as well. If he was Life Orb, I was probably going to die there. But he wasn't Life Orb, it turns out. So that ultimately, yeah, the miss kind of matters in the moment, but we'll see as the game goes on. I don't think it actually comes into play too much necessarily. As he's going to go for a second Heat Wave, my Diancie is going to dodge. That would have done like two anyway. So blind Tornadus, but I don't think either of the misses is super consequential in the game necessarily. As here, I'm going to leave my Diancie in. As yeah, so this is an interesting play. So I leave my Diancie in on the Ferrothorn because if Ferrothorn knocks me out on this turn, then I get to go straight into my Infernape, right? Because he already let his Suicune get weakened. He already let his Suicune get weakened. I have a Spike and I have Stealth Rock on the field. His entire team is already in range of my Infernape if I just let my Diancie go down here to the Ferrothorn. So I have no reason to do anything but stay in and go for the HP Fire, as unfortunately he goes for the Stealth Rock there, and I guess predicts me to switch out, or maybe he even knew the situation in that case, I'm not really sure, but even so, I am able to get rid of the Ferrothorn with my Diancie, and he takes me out with the Tornti as a revenge. That is perfectly fine. Here I'm going to go into my Mesprit to offensively check the Tornti, going to go straight for the Ice Beam, expecting him to go into his Crocodile instead of any other mon on his team. Now here I would, I should probably pause here as well. There's going to be a few pauses in this game because it was a pretty high-level match, I felt. So instead of leaving my Mesprit in to try to take out the Crocodile on that turn, I actually switch into my Crobat there, and that's because I don't want to give the Barbaracle a free setup opportunity either. As while I do think I have the tools to be able to take any hit from Barbaracle, I don't really want to take that hit either. Plus, I obviously didn't, yeah, I just didn't want to be put in that position at this point in the game. I wanted to keep the Barbaracle out as long as possible so that I could go for my sweep before he has a chance to go for his. So I go into my Crobat on the Crocodile's knockoff. I see that he's Black Sludge, which is good information to have, and I'm just going to go straight for what I believe is a Brave Bird here to get a little more chip damage on the Crocodile, because once again, if I get that Brave Bird chip on the Crocodile, that's yet another opportunity to get off my free Flame Charge with my Infernape. Unfortunately, once again, he doesn't let me do that, but he does go into his Suicune, basically sacrificing that since I was able to taunt it and prevent it from doing anything else. But here I'm going to just go into my Zygarde and go for the Dragon Dance, because if he doesn't get the burn, I could have actually swept right here with a +1 Zygarde, but unfortunately we're going to get set back on that as well, so I'm really getting kind of cock-blocked here with all my sweep opportunities, which is pretty unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. I'm going to Dragon Dance again, expecting him to either go for another Scald or to switch out into something else, and he decides to go into his Crocodile. I'm not going to mess around with this, I just want to get rid of it because I do have the speed boost, and I know that if I take out the Crocodile, he's going to be forced to let me get a lot of damage off on something else on his team, even being burned. Zygarde at +1 burn still does a good chunk to this Gardevoir, as you can see. Now here I'm going to go into my Infernape, and I'm going to go straight for the Flame Charge, just in case he wants to sack off his Gardevoir and not make the better play going into his Suicune that died to hazards anyways. And here we see that I'm going to switch into my Ferrothorn as he fires off a Supersonic Sky Strike. Now I'll pause once again, as this is kind of where, and he's going to just pick me off with the Heat Wave. I'll go ahead and show that since it already went off. He's going to pick me off with the Heat Wave, and this is why, like what I said earlier, this is where that kind of comes into play, where I sacked off my Ferrothorn to the Tornadus anyways later on in the game, and it didn't cost him any extra damage on his Tornti, so I don't really think the miss earlier mattered, but you know, maybe plays would have been different. But yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, clarify why I said what I did earlier on. Is now sack off the Ferrothorn, obviously. I'm going to go into my Mesprit to weaken down the Tornti. He misses Hurricane here, so man, this Tornti really is blind in this game, but I was guaranteed to survive. The only way that could have mattered in that case is if he had gotten the Confusion Hacks on my Mesprit, but I guess we'll never know. As now, I am going to go for another Thunderbolt as he goes into his Gardevoir. This play, though, this play that I made here was actually really short-sighted, because there's absolutely no way that Ceton is going to sack off his Tornti on that turn. Every single day of the week he's going to go into his Gardevoir. Now what this does, what I actually should have done on that turn is doubled into Infernape, and you'll see why in just a second, as now he's able to go straight into his Barbaracle. Okay, now I didn't run any calcs throughout these last few turns, and I really should have, right? Because Barbaracle actually has a very high chance, a pretty high chance, of being able to survive my Mesprit's Thunderbolt from this amount of health. I thought that Barbarka was like guaranteed going to go down to a Thunderbolt from this range, but I looked at the calc in this specific, like on turn 27, after this had already happened, right? I looked at the calc, I'm like, oh shoot. This is not guaranteed at all. I thought Thunderbolt was going to be able to knock this thing out. I thought I would be able to clean sweep with Mesprit. And nope, this is going to be a pure roll to see if we can move on to the top 16 of this tournament. And we get the roll. So lucked out a little bit there for sure. Kind of bailed me out from a really short-sighted play, but Mesprit is able to clean up the pieces. Now, what I really should have done there at the end is expecting him to go into his Gardevoir as a sack to allow him to set up with Barbarkle. I should have doubled into Infernape and just clicked Flame Charge right then. Because even if I got that prediction wrong, if this endgame was something I was playing to, trying to win with Mesprit, then I didn't need Infernape anyway, so I might as well have tried to make that play to potentially ensure a safer win that didn't depend on a roll instead of the route that I just chose to take here in this endgame, if that makes sense. So, you know, we got bailed out a little bit there with the roll at the end. Definitely a pretty hacksy game overall, both in terms of the roll and in terms of stuff that happened throughout the battle. He missed a lot of moves. I got burned at a really crucial moment with Zygarde, so that was just a really hacksy game. Unfortunate that that's kind of how this match went for both of us. But, you know, we did come out on top, which is pretty awesome. So we are moving on to the top 16 of Brawl for All in this for this tournament. And in the top 16, we will be taking on Commonly. I believe it was our top 16 opponent. So I'll be bringing you guys that battle here coming up in the next episode. So I hope you guys are enjoying this series so far. Hope you enjoyed this video as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the draft too. I really like this draft, guys. Like I don't know if you can tell, but like I feel like this draft just fits me so well. There's a lot of bulky stuff. There's good setup sweepers. There's great momentum. Lots of hazards. It just got everything that I really like. Really good synergy too, I feel. So and also like Araquanid was not on this team, but I really like Araquanid now for sure. So I brought it in a lot of the previous games, and I believe I bring it in the next game too, which you'll see here in the next episode. But Araquanid is pretty cool. Really liking every single mon that was on my draft here for this tournament. But yep, that's enough rambling for now. I will see you all in the next episode. Peace.